reading 6 study questions for the second reading for Job. Number 1, describe how, starting with chapter 3, Job's response to his plight changes. Do you approve of this change? Why or why not? Well, it is quite an interesting text, Job, because it does seem to me that clearly chapters 1 and 2 form a kind of complete story. A very, I mean, it's simple, but a much simpler story than we would have had if it didn't continue in chapter 3. The response to Job in the first 2 chapters is complete acceptance. As all these awful things happen to him. And he says, I've got to take the good with the bad. What God's will be done. And this is just it. I've got to accept. God is good, right? And in chapter 3, things take a turn. That is, Job begins to question God in a very serious way. So that simple acceptance in the first 2 chapters changes to something like I don't know, it becomes the whole thing changes insofar as Job begins to doubt the justice of what's happened to him and therefore challenge God in a way. So it changes utterly, I would say, after chapter 2. Now, how it changes or what the ultimate point is, that becomes very complex. Now, looking at question 2, describe the point that Eliphaz the Temanite makes to Job in chapters 4 and 5. Do you agree with this position? Why or why not? That is not an easy question because it's not easy to, for me at least, to make a decision about what point Eliphaz the Temanite is actually making. It's a very subtle point, I guess, if it's one point. It's clear that he makes some point. He does. Some of the things he says are clear. In the beginning, in verse 3, he says, look, and he's speaking to Job, right? This is a friend of Job speaking to him. Look, you have instructed many and made firm their feeble hands. Your words have upheld the stumbler. You have strengthened faltering knees. But now that it comes to you, you are impatient. When it touches you, you are dismayed. Now, that's a point right there. That is saying to Job, well, Job, you've comforted a lot of people in their misfortunes and given them some sort of support. But now it's happened to you. That is, now you are suffering misfortune and you are impatient. When it touches you, you are dismayed. As if to say, well, you have, when it's happened to other people, you've been able to, to comfort them. But now it's happening to you, and you are, dismayed. Because it's happening to you, right, rather than somebody else. So that's a point. But then he says, reflect now. This is verse 7. Reflect now, what innocent person perishes? Where are the upright destroyed? What point is he making there? I don't know. I think he's reading it. I think he's saying, have hope. If you are innocent, you will not perish. If you are upright, you will not be destroyed. As if to say, God is just and you will come out of this. That's my take on it now. I don't know. Maybe I would have had a different opinion before I reread it just now. But he seems to be saying to him, this too shall pass, maybe. I mean, there is also a suggestion that we cannot understand God, and this becomes very important later on. In verse 8 of chapter 5, he says, in your place I would appeal to God, and to God I would state my plea. He does things great and unsearchable, things marvelous and innumerable, as if you cannot really hope to comprehend or understand God. And then he goes into the way that human fortune shifts very quickly. Right? He sets up the lowly on high, and those who mourn are raised to safety. This is verse 11. He frustrates the plans of the cunning so that their hands achieve no success. He catches the wise in their own ruses, and the designs of the crafty are routed. That is to say, that human fortune changes very quickly. And so in verse 16, he says, "Thus the needy have hope, and iniquity closes its mouth. Happy the one whom God reproves, the Almighty's discipline do not reject. For he wounds, but he binds up. He strikes, but his hands give healing. Out of 6 troubles he will deliver you." Excuse me. And the seventh, and at the seventh no evil shall touch you, as if to say, there is an end here. There's light at the end of the tunnel here. Remember that human beings, that there are so many reversals of fortune in life that you cannot predict what will happen next. And you should have hope that you will come out of this. I think that's what I would say his overall point perhaps is right now. So question 3, what point is Bildad the Shuhite making to Job in chapter 8? Do you agree with his position? Why or why not? Again, not so easy to say what the point is, what Bildad the Shuhite is saying to Job here. He begins, how long will you utter such things? The words from your mouth are a mighty wind. That is Job's complaining about his situation. A lot of hot air, right? And then he says in verse 3, does God pervert judgment? Does the Almighty pervert justice? As if to say that I think the suggestion may be that whatever's happened to Job must be just. That is, whatever has happened to Job must be something that he deserves. I think there is a hint of that here. Because God is just, so that whatever is happening to Job must be just in some way. That is, Job must deserve it. And that's exactly what Job is disputing. But that's just a suggestion. And then he goes on to say that you have to have faith in God. Remember, he says, inquire of the former generations, verse 8. Pay attention to the experience of their ancestors. That this is what our ancestors have told us. It's just have faith in God and accept and believe that God is just and that whatever God wills is good. And that's what you have to rely upon. Pretty amazing passage here, verse 11. Can the papyrus grow up without mire? Can the reed grass flourish without water? While it is yet green and uncut, it withers quicker than any grass. So is the end of everyone who forgets God. And so shall the hope of the godless perish. That is, there's only one thing that can support you, and that's faith in God. So what is he saying to him? I think he's suggesting that, yes, God is just. So whatever's happening to you, you deserve it. You have to believe that. Because if you don't believe that is, you don't believe that God is just. And if you don't have faith in God, then you have nothing. Number 4, in chapter 9, Job says, when the scourge slays suddenly, he scoffs at the despair of the innocent. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked. He covers the face of its judges. If it is not he, who then is it? So what point is Job making here, and what do you think of it? Well, I think that things become a little more clear here, like what the problem is. Because the he that Job is referring to is clearly God. And what I think is saying is that the world is unjust. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked. The innocent suffer, right? And he, God, scoffs at the despair of the innocent. If it is not he, who then is it? That is, if the world is an unjust place, and people do not get what they deserve, and who is ultimately responsible for that? God. That is, if it's not God who's responsible for the injustice of the world, then who is it? God made the world, and God rules the world, really, and God lets the world be unjust. It's after all, it's human beings being unjust to each other, or misfortune just happening, like the misfortunes of Job. And if God isn't responsible for that, who is? But the implications of that are incredible. I mean, it's kind of the central problem of the book is God is, excuse me, Job is all but accusing God of injustice. Number 5, in chapters 38 through 42, God answers Job. What is his answer? That is a very difficult question. You know, it's puzzling. There are long passages where God just describes his creation, but there are certain points where he basically tells Job that, Job, you are in no position to question me. That's not the way it works. Human beings don't question God. It's the other way around. And yes, I think that's his answer. Maybe there are obviously there are other characterizations of what God's answer to Job is, but that's what I would say it is. And the real question is this a sufficient response to Job's complaint? That's obviously something you need to work out for yourself.